So welcome back to part 2 of a series where we rank every single boss weapon in the entire classic Mega Man series from 1 to 11, excluding Mega Man and Bass and the Game Boy games, because I have not played those. Whenever I do get around to playing those, then maybe we can add them. But yeah, part 1, we looked at the weapons from Mega Man 1. As you can see here, quite a high variance. Today, we'll be talking about Mega Man 2 and determining the utility and usefulness of every weapon in this game. Quickly, before we start off, if you haven't seen part 1, then I recommend you watch it before you watch this video, so you understand my perspective of this series. Furthermore, we are only ranking boss weapons, so supplementary weapons, or like your standard Mega Buster, they are not included in this video, because I think it's a little bit comparing those to these weapons. Like, I don't think it's a super clean comparison. They vary too much in their use cases, so different criteria, I decided to leave them out. Before we get started, I want to thank Emilio Mario 27 for compiling this tier list. Go check them out on Twitter if you're a fan of Mega Man. Oh, and one last thing before we start, these are not being ranked in a vacuum. So for example, if there's one broken weapon that is just better than every other weapon in the game, that's going to relegate everything else pretty low. Even if, like, in a vacuum, let's say the second best weapon is good in its own right, if it's worse than the top weapon, I don't really see how it can't be in top tier, and honestly, it probably won't be in A tier. And Mega Man 2 is the game in the series where this is the most relevant, because we are starting off with the probably most infamous weapon in the entire series, the Metal Blade. Any objections? The Metal Blade is just insane. Big hitbox. You can fire in 8 directions, your cardinal directions, then all the diagonal degrees between those, like in 45 degree increments. You can rapid fire it. I mean, in general, just even if it was just for vertical hitboxes, anti-airs were really great to have in a game like this, where enemies are often coming down on you. You can rapid fire it. The damage is obscenely high, and if all that wasn't enough, most of the bosses are weirdly weak to it. Metal Man himself infamously dies in 2 hits to it, and even it's way better for bosses like Woodman to use this than Woodman's actual weakness. The ammo is obscene on this. There is a glitch where you can basically get infinite ammo, but to be honest, given how high the ammo count is, that's not even really that much of a boon to it. Just what an insane weapon. Probably a little bit too broken, to be honest, because as we'll see later on, it kind of throws the game's balance completely out of whack. But yeah, even Thunder Beam, for all the obscene strengths as that had, you couldn't fire it in literally like every direction, right? You couldn't rapid fire it. You didn't have obscene amounts of ammo. Had a lot. They didn't have as much ammo as Metal Blade. Truly insane. And yeah, speaking of, a weapon outclassing another, Air Shielder on paper is not a bad weapon, right? Like, you shoot out 3 gusts of air that rise kind of diagonally up in like a curve. the waves, the little tornadoes themselves, the shots, they disperse the further up that they travel, so like the shot widens up a bit, so you get quite a lot of coverage with this weapon. And again, an anti-air in a game like this is always going to be useful. Unfortunately, okay, one last strength of a weapon. If you can land every single shot on an enemy, like those sniping joes that pilot those big mechs in Wily 4 and Quick Man stage, you can do a lot of damage, which, you know, that's nice. It's a bit situational, but it's a use, I guess. The problem with Air Shooter, one, it doesn't work on every enemy you'd expect, like those little rectangular guys, but a lot of them are in Heatman stage that come from the holes. Yeah, the Air Shooter just doesn't work on them, like, at all. Those completely resist this attack. I don't know why, I think that's pretty dumb, but what's way more detrimental for the Air Shooter is the Metal Blade, because realistically, when are you ever gonna use Air Shooter over Metal Blade? Like, maybe if you run out of ammo with Metal Blade, but good luck doing that. I mean, yeah, the Air Shooter does have a decent amount of ammo itself, but again, that's not really a factor, because you're just gonna use Metal Blade anyway. Metal Blade is faster, it has better coverage, so yeah, it kind of leaves Air Shooter a bit stranded. In most games, like, let's say Metal Blade didn't exist, in most games, I feel like Air Shooter would definitely be the B tier. In Mega Man 2 specifically, I actually think it's gonna go down to C. It's better than Rolling Cutter, because it's just a better weapon standalone. It's not a bad weapon standalone, but it's so heavily outclassed by the Metal Blade, it barely even matters. Next, we have Bubble Lead. I'm gonna be real, Bubble Lead is quite bad. Bubble Lead is the first weapon of an archetype in the series that comes up a lot, where it's a ground-bound weapon where you shoot it out and it sticks to the ground and moves across the ground, and later versions of this weapon can move up and down surfaces, like ledges and walls and the like. Bubble Lead could only move down, but that's not the reason Bubble Lead sucks. The reason Bubble Lead sucks is despite, potentially, you know, you can hit enemies directly below you, and despite the fact that it does have a lot of ammo, this thing is so weak. A lot of enemies just flat out resist it, which sucks. Again, I have no idea why they did that. And even the ones that do, like those bacon dispensers in Flashman stage, it takes like 6 shots of this thing to destroy them. It's so dumb. Yeah. That's it. That's really the only reason why it's as bad as it is. It's just way too underpowered. It has one decent use case in stage, that being in Wily 2. You can use Bubble Leads for invisible floors that you can use Bubble Leads to detect, because they go along the ground, and then when they get to the invisible part, they'll go down, telling you where, like, you'll fall. Which is nice. That is a decent use case, but one stage in a game where this thing is at all useful, it's not cutting it. Furthermore, like, you could say, oh, well, you need it to beat Wily, the final phase of Wily. That's true, but, like, as we talked about in part 1, I'm not really factoring in times where the weapon's mandatory, because this video is more about, like, when would you want to use the weapon, as opposed to when it's forced. I just think, like, if a weapon was useless the entire game, and then had one time in the game where you needed to use it, you could very well say, oh, well, you need to use it, so it's S tier, because you physically can't beat the game without it, you know? I just think that's pretty lame criteria, and not really in the spirit of this video. It's bad. It is bad. It's better... wait your turn. It's better than the other weapons in D tier, because at the very least it has one stage. It has some use in, which is more than can be said for these two, and you can actually use it all the time, unlike this one. But realistically, you're never using Bubble Lad, unless again it's in Wily 4. Quick Boomerang. So Quick Boomerang is another pretty famous weapon from this game. It's kind of similar to the rolling cutter from the first game. You shoot out a boomerang in front of you with short range that comes back to you. Not quite as much coverage as well as rolling cutter, whereas that kind of goes in a circular motion and thus can hit enemies above you by a little bit. Quick Boomerang is a bit more it goes in more of like an ovular sort of shape where it doesn't really have vertical coverage so much. It can hit ground-bound enemies though, which is nice. Basically all of that doesn't matter though, because Quick Boomerang otherwise completely outclasses Rolling Cutter in every sense of the word. It's high damage, you can fire 4 at a time. It's true to its name, it's very quick and non-committal, and what really elevates this one is the ammo count on Quick Boomerang is actually disgusting. Like, you get 4 use cases, I think, per item bar. It might even be 8. I'd have to, like, fact check that, but if you use Quick Boomerang only in the stage, you will have more than enough ammo, if you're like a semi-decent player, to get through the stage. It really is disgusting. Like, it can't be S tier because not only is a Metal Blade also just insane and like generally better than Quick Boomerang, even as far as like damage and like, well, not damage, but again, it's no slouch in that regard, and they can hit across the stage, and the coverage is really good. Quick Boomerang has bad range, which is, like, a legitimate weakness. Otherwise, this thing is pretty gross. I don't think it can beat Firestorm, because whereas Firestorm can offer something to Mega Man 1 players that Thunderbeam cannot, you can still, generally speaking, unless you're going for, like, damage, generally speaking, again, you're probably just better off in this game using Metal Blade. But Quick Boomerang is pretty nuts in its own right. In most games, this would be yes too. Crash Bomber. So Crash Bomber is a low ammo projectile bomb weapon that can pierce through weaker enemies, and it's starting with Mega Man 2. A lot of the levels have breakable walls that have items hidden behind them, which you can use Crash Bomber in this game for, which is pretty good. When the weapon detonates, it also has a pretty big blast radius. Yeah, so the Hyper Bomb, obviously last game, was really bad, and this bomb, not much better. Again, like, yeah, it can get you optional collectibles like lives and E-tanks, like, that is pretty good, to be fair. You might think it being a flying projectile weapon, but as opposed to a ground-bound weapon, would make it better. The thing is, yes, it can pierce weaker enemies, but again, its ammo count is insanely low, and it's just a weak weapon. Like, really disappointingly weak. Against bigger enemies, this thing doesn't do anything, and even against smaller enemies, it's not that big of a projectile and only fires straight forward, so why the hell would you use this as opposed to just using Metal Blade or Quick Boomerangs, you know? Yeah. Is there anything else it can do? Not really. Again, it's a utility item that can give you a leg up as far as, again, items. Occasionally it can also add, lead you to easier routes across some of the stages, Flashman stage really comes to mind as far as that goes. So as a utility weapon, it's not that useful all the time, but it's okay sometimes. As a weapon, it's very bad. So I think given its utility that gives it more to offer than really any of these weapons, it's pretty bad though. I'm gonna put it here, I think, for now, because as opposed to Rolling Cutter, it does have a niche that, is very much its own. Whereas Rolling Cutter is just kind of superannuated by Thunderbeam and Firestorm in its game, but even though, again, I think standalone it's probably a bit worse. Time Stop is kind of a similar thing. Of this is more of a utility weapon that, stops enemies and stage hazards, stops everything for a few, it's about 15 seconds. The ability to stop time sounds really good. The problem with this weapon, as everyone has talked about, is the time that enemies' stage hazards are frozen is not that long. You have to use it all in one go, which really sucks. It doesn't turn off hitboxes from enemies or stage hazards, so you have to be very careful about when you use this, because if there are enemies in the way, or if there's anything in the way with a hitbox, then it's useless. It's worse even than if you hadn't used it. Has its moments, definitely makes Quickman stage a lot easier, I will say. It's Quickman's weakness, and Quickman is a really BS boss without it, so that's obviously not great. The only other time I can really think of where it's kind of useful is, I think it's Wily Stage 2, where there are those chandeliers that drop down on you. I guess there are those in Metal Blade's Man stage as well, but it's still it's not that great. You definitely don't need it to pass them. So again, with Crash Bomber, it's that same argument again of it's a utility weapon, but as a weapon that you use to kill your standard nukes, it's basically worthless. As a utility weapon, it's a little better, I will say, even compared to Crash Bomber though. The amount of times you actually need to use it are even a way lower. Again, its best use case, Quickman stage, also makes it so you can't use it for the boss essentially at all, so yeah, Time Stop is pretty bad. Quickman stage is very hard, and being able to get through it a lot more comfortably is better than anything the weapons beneath it can do, but it's useful basically one time in the entire game, and even that, there's a caveat to it, so can't go any higher than D. Atomic Fire. So Atomic Fire is a chargeable projectile, the first in the series, that has 3 stages. You can fire little shots, medium shots, big shots, and I will say the big shot is quite powerful. One-shots these Sniper Joes, assuming it doesn't touch their shield, and the weapon's bad. Again. So the little projectiles are very weak. The medium projectiles are again, still too weak to justify the time you put into it. And the big shots, yes, they do good damage, and the big projectiles, but you can only fire them straight forwards, and they're very committal, and they take up like so much ammo. Like, I think it's 2 charge shots and like you're done, and then you can't use any more. Why? And again, in the same game where you can just rapid fire metal blades. Yeah, it's bad. I also feel like the charge itself, like, because of how it's communicated, it's quite hard to intuit when you reach the next step of the charge, so it's not always obvious when you have like a medium shot if you're going for that, as opposed to like a small shot. Very niche situation where you can use it to kill Sniper Joes quickly, which are very annoying enemies, to be fair, but even then, unless like they've just come into the stage, you're still better off like using something else. Even Crash Bomber is better for Sniper Joes because its blast radius, while very weak, can pierce its shield. Yep, I'm feeling another D tier, and again, is it better than? It's not as good as Time Stopper. As far as it versus Bubble Lad, like, it's better standalone. Even Bubble Lad has a use case in Wily Stage 4 where you can like detect holes in the floor. Atomic Fire can't do anything. Yeah, I think it's even below it versus Hyper Bomb. It's a projectile that actually goes somewhere, and you have some flexibility in how you use it, so I guess it's better. I don't know. It's really bad, though. Leaf Shield. So Leaf Shield is probably second to Metal Blade, the most iconic weapon in the entire series. The first shield weapon in the series, and shield weapons are a pretty iconic type of weapon in the series, as we'll go on to see later in this series. A lot of future games have one. So the first shield has 2 modes essentially. You can hold it as a shield, or you can throw it as a projectile. The projectile itself is actually not that bad. It's a big projectile. It pierces small enemies. You can fire it in the 4 cardinal directions, which, especially shooting it up, that's actually pretty useful. So it's a good anti-air weapon. And on platforms where you don't have to move, like in Crash Land Stage or Wily 4, where you just sit there and, otherwise you'd be at the mercy of enemies, just putting up your shield is really useful, because any small enemy that comes into that touches your shield just dies. So as a shield, unfortunately, it's pretty bad. I'd even go as far as to say really bad. Like, it's good, obviously, again, when you don't have to move, but the big caveat with this weapon is you move when the shield fires off when you move. So if you thought you could, like, put up your shield and run with it, you can't do that. Doesn't block projectiles, which really sucks. Pretty much useless against any bigger enemy. The projectile, again, is definitely the best use case for weapon, but it's not that strong, so it's good against small enemies, but nothing big. Yeah, it's just a very ineffective shield, which is a shame, because again, the projectile is kind of decent, but as a shield, it's just super niche. I think, and keep in mind, as far as the projectile's good, it's decent, but it's in the same game as Metal Blade, which again kind of surpasses it in most aspects. And the shield aspect, the more specialized version, application of the weapon, is definitely what you'd rather be good. So I think that caps Leaf Shield here. Shield weapons, even though again this one doesn't have the best standalone traits, especially as a shield, that's always going to give it like a little bit of utility that only this weapon can fulfill as opposed to anything else. It's always going to have a place, but man, I do wish the actual shield part of the weapon was better. And but yeah guys, that's it for that's every Mega Man 2 weapon ranked in accordance to the entire series. Join us next time when we talk about Mega Man 3. As you can see here with Mega Man 2's weapons, the problem with this game's weapons, even though I think standalone they're about on par with the first game, and props to this game for they're definitely more interesting than ones, like they definitely experimented with some of the weapon types like Leaf Shield and Crash Bomber, Time Stop, Atomic Fire, all new concepts for the series. But it's Metal Blade. Every weapon is going to be compared to Metal Blade because that Gator weapon is so broken, and it's not a favorable comparison. Air Shooter, Leaf Shield will both be better weapons in a game without Metal Blade. But yeah, that's it for this video. If you liked, then give it a like. If you didn't like, maybe dislike. Please leave a comment. If there's an application for these weapons that I'm missing, please leave it down, and maybe I'll revise my opinions somewhere down the line. But for now, that's it. See you next time in Mega Man 3.